Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm Tristan Riddell.
And you're listening to the Nerd Party.
Talk nerdy to me.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
All right, everybody, thank you for listening and thank you for downloading our podcast. This is the Nerd Party, and this is episode 11. And today we are talking about the much anticipated movie and also kind of a almost mixed reviews movie, as far as I'm concerned, Interstellar.
Yes, and just be forewarned, there will be spoilers galore. We realize that this is a newly released movie, so we just wanted to warn you up front, but there's no way to talk about this movie without diving into it.
Yes, I mean, we do appreciate spoiler reviews and non-spoiler reviews, but sometimes spoilers are just needed, especially when you talk about a movie this in-depth. And so, if you have not seen this movie yet, do not listen to this podcast, okay? Listen, both Matt and I have given you a warning. This is another warning. If you have not seen the movie, don't listen. Turn it off. Keep it downloaded on your phone or wherever. And save it for later.
Yes, we appreciate the patronage, but watch the movie first.
Watch the movie first. At the time of this recording, Interstellar worldwide has made $321 million, almost 322, and about 98 million of that is domestic. And that is nothing to sneeze at, especially considering it released on the 5th, and we're recording this on the 16th.
Certainly not, and it's got plenty more weeks to go as we go into what I like to term the holiday blockbuster season.
That's right, and it had a production budget of about $165 million. We have no idea how much they spent on advertisement, but that's really all that we can, kind of grade it on. And as all of you know, if you're a movie buff like we are, it was directed by Christopher Nolan, and this is his first film since The Dark Knight Rises.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been following this movie for a long time, and I was following this ever since, I don't know, it was passed by Steven Spielberg and then brought on Chris Nolan's plate by his brother, John Nolan, who wrote it with him.
Yeah, I'd never heard that this was supposed to be a Steven Spielberg movie, but given the emotional content that this movie tries to go for, that all of a sudden makes more sense.
Yeah, this would have been a very, very different movie if this was directed by Spielberg. But the thing is, though, is that I could see Steven Spielberg direct this. I mean, there's so many movies out there that are very much the director, like a Scorsese picture or a Coppola picture or a Kubrick film or something like that. Like, it's what you could only picture that director directing this. And Nolan has had some of those films, like Memento
Right.
or Inception or something like that. But this film, I feel like I could see Spielberg direct it. I'm not saying it would be better. I'm not saying it would be worse, but it's that kind of source material that I think Spielberg latches on to.
Well, just to preview my thoughts a little bit about the movie itself, and we'll delve into it, but I feel like knowing now that this was supposed to be Spielberg, this feels like a Spielberg movie that Nolan has tried to drag into Kubrickian territory.
And as we all know that Spielberg is in love with Kubrick. And I mean, most directors are, but Spielberg especially.
And Nolan is too.
Yeah. And have you seen Artificial Intelligence?
Yes, I've seen. It's been years and years, but yes, I've seen Artificial Intelligence, and I know that was a Spielberg film that was also started by Kubrick and before he died.
That's right. It was originally supposed to be a Kubrick film, but then Spielberg took it over and then had to redo the ending in a very Spielbergian way, which was much maligned by a lot of people. We're talking about Kubrick a lot because if you have seen this movie, you can tell that this has a lot of Kubrick influences. But before we get into that, Matt, how about you just tell us your first impressions? Like, what were you... Okay, how about this way? What were you thinking about it leading up to it before you walked into the theater? And then what were your thoughts as you were watching it?
Tristan, I have to be honest with you up front and with the listeners, because I feel like Nolan is one of those directors that has this huge following, and while I can appreciate what the man does with cinema, and I think he brings some unique traits, I couldn't really call myself a fan. I mean, to be fair, I've seen all of Christopher Nolan's films up to this point, and I watched a lot of them leading up to the release of Interstellar, just so that I could get a feel for his style. I've seen the Batman films before, so I was looking at every of his non-Batman releases. So I watched all the way back to his first. I think it was, I don't know if it was a student film or it was a non-commercial release film, but I watched Following, Memento, Insomnia, The Prestige, and Interstellar. I saw Inception in the theater, so I didn't rewatch that one. I think he brings a unique style, and I think it's always visually spectacular, and it's always sort of he loves the sort of twist, didn't see it coming ending, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like he can get too bogged down in his own auteurness. Honestly, too, I just to be perfectly honest, the band of, well, it's more like the Church of Nolan followers now, just have kind of, you know how some people like rave so much about certain something that if you end up saying you only just like certain things, they consider it blasphemous.
Yeah, those people annoy me.
Because that seems to be the majority, and I hate to put such a blanket statement on it, but it just seems to be the majority of Nolan fans. You must think that everything he touches is a piece of art. You can't merely just like his films; you have to be art.
I haven't really met too many people like that about Chris Nolan.
You haven't hung around the Chris Nolan parts of the internet, then.
I guess not. Yeah, as you know, as you stated, I'm a huge Chris Nolan fan. I fell in love with him ever since Memento came out, and that was in 2001, and that was his second film. And yeah, I don't know the story behind Following. I should, because it made almost no money. But with Memento, I mean, that kind of put him on the map, and his career just snowballed after that with Insomnia, and then Begins and Prestige, then Dark Knight, then Inception, then Dark Knight Rises, and he became this massive hit, and he became this auteur. And sometimes he can get a little obsessed with himself and his own style. But I went to film school, and I also went to a private school, and blah blah blah. And there was different types of film fans no matter where I was. But when I was living in Chinatown, I roomed with 4 or 5 other guys, and they were all film students. And so they all had their particular directors that they were in love with. And there was, I think 3 of them were hardcore Scorsese fans. And if I said anything negative about anything related to Scorsese, they just acted like I had no idea what I was talking about. And so I know that breed of person very well. And I'm a huge Scorsese fan, but I'm not blind to my fandom. I realize that there are movies that Scorsese has made that I think are crap. And there's even Insomnia with Chris Nolan's work. I didn't really like Insomnia. I love Chris Nolan. I thought it was well directed, but I didn't like the movie, and I'm not going to bow down to him just because he made it.
Right. It's same here. I mean, I ended up really loving Memento and Insomnia. Those were my 2 favorite picks, actually, from my run through of Nolan. But it's the same thing where, like, if among superhero circles, say, if you don't think that The Dark Knight is the best piece of cinema ever made that has a superhero in it, somehow that's wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, I know exactly what you mean. Like in that one, I felt full force but that wasn't so much Chris Nolan godlike status. That was a Batman kind of status, because I live in the Chicagoland area, and when Dark Knight was being shot, I actually lived in Chicago. You could not talk to another Chicagoan and say like you didn't like The Dark Knight or you didn't like Christopher Nolan without them going, whoa, I don't think you know what you're talking about. It was a sense of civic pride to love The Dark Knight when you were in Chicago.
Well, it went beyond Chicago. It kind of went to like the whole internet fandom, to the point where, I don't know if you remember this, but when Dark Knight Rises was coming out and certain people and online critics didn't think it was as good as that second film, that's when Rotten Tomatoes had to shut down their comment section because people were getting death threats.
I don't remember that. My goodness. That's just taking it too far. We're talking about movies here, folks. We're talking about it's entertainment. Let's just keep it with entertainment. I mean, I just, that kind of stuff just makes me sad when I hear that going on online and even in person. I mean, like, I'm not saying I slept with your mother and she was a horrible lay. What I'm saying is that Interstellar was just okay, or The Dark Knight Rises didn't meet up to expectations. You know, like, it just.
So putting all that aside for a second, you asked me what my initial reactions to Interstellar, what I wanted going in. And
Oh yeah, that was my original question, wasn't it? Yeah. What did you think about Interstellar?
okay, going in, I knew that I was going to see something that was going to be an homage to Kubrick in 2001, because I heard that sort of banter, sort of thrown about as the film was releasing. But I didn't follow this nearly as closely as you did. I just knew it was coming out and I'd seen the trailer. And it looked visually amazing, so I was like, okay, I've never seen an IMAX film before, because here in where I live in Tucson, we have, your standard IMAX knockoffs, and we have an IMAX theater that's not really IMAX. So, fortunately, during the weekend of release for Interstellar, I was on vacation in San Diego where there are real IMAX theaters, so I actually got to see Interstellar. It was my first IMAX experience, 70 millimeter in a real theater, and I just wanted to be visually blown away, which I was. I fully admit that's one of the biggest draws for this film, and I think it's one of the reasons why it ultimately will do well in theaters, because I think the word of mouth is, however you feel about the film itself, it's something that must be experienced in the theater rather than at home.
Yes, and I think there's even though I'm such a huge film nerd and film buff, there's very few movies that I feel like I have to go to the theater and see. That, I mean, like, there's so many times I'll talk to some friends of mine and I'm like, oh, should I go see this in the theater because it needs to be seen in the theater? And they'll always say yes. I mean, they'll always say yes, and it's usually BS. But with Nolan films, you're guaranteed that this is intended to be a theatrical experience, and that's one thing that I really like about Nolan, is that he sticks to film, and I mean that literally. He
Yes.
uses film, and he uses it to its best ability to this day. And it's, when he uses IMAX, he uses it appropriately. And that's the thing, is that there's so many times that you can, like, it'll say like, oh, Hunger Games released in IMAX, or Star Trek released in IMAX. It doesn't mean that it was shot in IMAX.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily, but it does happen. But Nolan has been doing it, and Nolan actually shoots his films in IMAX, so it's not just blown up and stretched out to fit a big screen. It is actually that native resolution.
Agreed, and it was definitely visible as you watched the film in IMAX. As far as reactions to the movie itself, well, I'm kind of glad we're having this discussion today, because, we talked before the show, I don't know. I really don't know. There really are, and it's not like I didn't understand the film, and that's really the biggest defense mechanism that the people who really love this film are lobbying against the people who weren't necessarily in love with it, is that, oh, well, you don't love it because you just don't get it, which I think is such
everybody's excuse. Every single time there's a movie that comes out that has a little bit of intricate plot and someone doesn't like it, they're like, oh, that's because you don't get it. That's because you're stupid.
But because this film relies, so it's a hard science fiction film, and we're talking hard science fiction. But because of that, and because there's real science, that gives them more ammo to say, oh, you just didn't get it. No, and I want to debunk that idea right now. I got the film. I knew what they were saying. I've watched sci-fi before, so I'm kind of tuned into this sort of thing. I got what they were saying. I just don't know if I'm necessarily in love with everything that they did say. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. And that's one thing that I actually did like about the film, is that it was hard science. It was pro-science, and not a lot of movies are pro-science out there. Or, like, if they are science, it's like fake science, like in Fringe, where it's everything has the disguise of science, but underneath it's all just drivel. And with this one,
or even Star Trek to a certain extent. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely, no, Star Trek definitely falls into that category. But one thing about Star Trek is that it's rooted in real ideas and real theories that could one day happen. Not always, but with this one, they did their homework. They had consultants out the wazoo, and actually Michael Caine's character is a real person and a real astrophysicist. I think he's an astrophysicist. You can tell that they did their homework, and I'm a bit of a science nut. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a scientist. Because I'm not. I'm just I'm very much pro science, and I love science, and I'm interested in science, and I feel like we as a culture need to gravitate more towards that. But there is so many great things in the movie that it did well, and science is one of them.
Yes, I agree. I'm not saying that I wasn't liking what they were saying with the science. It was more toward the story and some character motivations, and we have to talk about the ending when we get there, because I think on first viewing I was less than pleased.
And that's the thing, folks, is that you may be wondering why we're not doing a summary, and I always never understood summaries when we're doing this because you've seen it, and we just told you at the beginning of the show, if you haven't seen it, don't listen to it. So we don't need to give you a summary because you've already seen it.
Yeah, I just don't want to lead with the ending. I'm just saying.
No, absolutely. I'm defending that. So
what about you? Because I remember you were posting on Twitter when you were going in to see Interstellar for the first time, and I fully expected 3 hours later to see some of the tweets I had seen from other Nolan fans calling this a masterpiece, and you did not. So
I didn't know. What I did was I posted on Twitter, like, it was very simplistic. I said I was like, going into Interstellar, talk to you 3 hours from now or whatever, and then I said I was like, leaving Interstellar now, going home. And that's all that I said. And like tons of people tweeted me back, said, what did you think? Without saying anything, without spoiling it, what did you think? And I was like, I can't tell you. I was like, what do you mean? Just like, tell me if you liked it or not. And I was like, I don't know. The people were upset with me. They're like, well, what do you mean you don't know? And I was like, I got to think about it. I'll talk to you later. And that's how I felt. It's like when I walked out, I wasn't confused about the film. I knew exactly what was going on, and even that crazy ending, I knew what was going on. I heard the theory, like I've heard the theory before about that space, and I don't know, like I was just, because it's kind of the same way that I felt out of Dark Knight Rises. Not as bad as when I left Star Trek Into Darkness, where I was like, well, I didn't even see a Star Trek film. But with like Dark Knight Rises, I was like, like it had some cool moments, but like it made some wrong decisions. And in Interstellar, it wasn't so much you made some wrong decisions. It was just, I don't know. I feel like it was built up too much. If the thing is that if there was no press about this movie, if there was no reviews, nobody saying that this was the greatest thing ever, no one saying that this was going to change the way that we perceive film, that it was Jesus come back on celluloid, if none of that happened, I would have seen it and gone, wow, that's a really good, solid sci-fi film. And then I would have been happy. But because all of those things were said, I was like, okay. And right now, like at the time, it was at 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, and right now it's just raised up to 1% more, so it's at 74. That's how I feel. I feel like that's a good rating for it.
Yeah, I do too, and even more so now that, again, not to keep harping on the point, but having discussions with people over the internet, I feel 74 is fair because, unlike a lot of people, I don't think that this is God on celluloid.
No.
I realize IMDb B ratings are not the precedent people should go for when looking up the quality of films. But right now, this thing is sitting at a 9 out of 10. I don't think this is a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, see, like the critics, like on Rotten Tomatoes, on IMDb it's 9 out of 10, and on Rotten Tomatoes it's 74 for all critics. And for the audience, they gave it an 87. So the audience liked it a whole bunch more than the critics. I am usually spot on with the critics, but lately I've been burned a lot recently. And I think the latest movie that really pissed me off was a Philip Seymour Hoffman movie, A Most Wanted Man. That was a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I was like, oh, this trailer looks awesome. 90%. This is almost guaranteed to be good. That was a piece of garbage. I want my 2 hours back.
I don't know. I still want to see that film because knowing you, it was probably excellent. You just dislike good things, as we've established.
No, dude, no. This is not like a Marvel situation where I'm like, no. This film made me angry. I wanted to punch something. It was so boring. It was pointless. Once you get to the end, you're just like, well, that was completely pointless. Thank you very much. Anyway, this is not a Rotten Tomatoes podcast. So yeah, okay. So I think I'm glad that you and I agree on this, where that we're kind of like not even middle of the road. Like this isn't a 50% movie. This isn't a 60% movie. This is a 74, 75. This is a really good, like that's certified fresh. That's a good film.
Yes.
It's just not. It's just not gospel. You know, it's not. It's not 2001.
No, and furthermore, I think that a lot of people are saying, well, this will be. I do agree with that. This film will be talked about for a long time, but given how I feel right now, and I guess I have to give it more than one viewing because I've only seen it the one time. Mm-hmm. I don't think this will be a film like 2001 where it's preserved in the Library of Congress. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. That's the thing, is that 2001 changed film. 2001 influenced so many modern directors today, and Kubrick's work influenced modern directors today. And Nolan is a huge Kubrick fan, as he should be. I mean, I'm not that big of a Kubrick fan, but I recognize his genius and I recognize his work and how it's influenced our culture. This movie is not going to influence our culture.
Right, and I am a Kubrick fan, and specifically as we talk about this film, Tristan, I wanted to compare, because obviously the big influence here, if we're talking Kubrick, is 2001. So I did a little extra credit, and I rewatched 2001, having seen Interstellar, and I tried to compare the things that Interstellar did and the things 2001 did, and I tried to figure out, okay, if I'm gonna critically review this, I'm gonna try to figure out why things in Kubrick's film worked for me than this Nolan film, rather than just, criticizing one or the other.
And what was your conclusion?
Specifically when it came to stuff like both films' endings, I feel like, not to preview the ending of Interstellar too much, but I feel like Kubrick, by having no dialogue in the ending and leaving it to draw your own conclusions, I feel that was a much better choice, at least for me, because some of the dialogue given toward the end of this film is really, really cheesy. I hate to say it, but it is. And it feels like it feels like that was the Spielberg part of the film coming out. You mentioned the ending of AI. I see this is kind of similar.
Okay, so I'm interested into what you think is cheesy. Now there is one moment particular where that gave me the biggest eye roll ever, because I thought this was a solid story. I thought it had solid performances, and I don't like Anne Hathaway. I don't like her. I didn't like her in Dark Knight Rises. I haven't seen her in a single thing that I've enjoyed. But the thing is, with this movie, I was like, as we were going through it, I was like, hey, okay, yeah, I can tolerate Anne. This is great. She's not doing anything stupid.
But then we get to the whole the love is quantifiable thing.
The love speech. Yes, that is exactly what I was building up to. Right? Like, because I was really great, because I was like, she's a female scientist. She knows what she's doing. This is going to be a positive fictional role model for women in STEM. And then she throws away all of the credibility that she built for the entire film, talking about how love is better than science, about how, like, that's how she's making her rationales, because love is strong.
And really, that's what that speech stems into my problems with the ending, is because that's really the thesis statement of this movie. Love is a quantifiable entity that transcends time and space and ultimately will save the human race over, the hard science.
Yeah. Yes, that, like, I had a big problem with that, and I think that pretty much ruined it for my wife. Like, she like when she walked, like, I liked it a whole lot more than my wife did, but when we walked out together, I was like, hey, what did you think? Did you like it? And she's like, all I'm thinking about is I want to see Gone Girl again. And I was like, dang, harsh. And it's just, yeah, that scene was so rough. It was just, really, like, we have such a hard science movie and something that's so believable, and you could see this happening on our current trajectory, and then we have this woman in science, and she just gives this whole thing about how, no, I love my man and I want to see him again, and that's stronger than all of your data, and that's got to mean something, right? And she ended up being wrong. Or actually, no, she ended up being right.
She ended up being right, which is bizarre. Just kind of setting up the scene real quick. So Earth is dying. Matthew McConaughey and crew are chosen to go to another galaxy via a wormhole and follow up on some previous scientists that went there in order to find a suitable replacement for Earth. They get there, and the first planet is no good, and they end up losing a bunch of time because of relativity and time bending and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that scene comes up with Anne Hathaway, they're deciding which of the two planets they're going to go to next. Both are supposedly suitable replacements according to the scientists that have already been there before. And McConaughey thinks they should go one way, and Anne Hathaway thinks that they should go the other. McConaughey's reasoning is that, well, the one planet that we want to go to, it was by the head scientist who went out, so if he's saying that it's good, it must be good. Mm-hmm. Her reasoning is what we just said.
Yeah, her boyfriend's on that other planet, and she feels a draw towards him, and so love conquers all. And this was like in the middle of the picture, or like right before the third act, and so it was just kind of really. But like regardless of that was really the only mainly cheesy moment that I remember. When you're saying that there was some cheesy writing, was there anything else that kind of stuck out to you?
Well, because that theme is the theme of the movie. When you get to the ending in which they're in the inner space and he's affecting the past through the bookshelf and all that sort of stuff, just I don't know, it got too sobby for me, and I understand what the emotion was going for, but you know, there was too much focus on moments that obviously already happened in the movie that he wasn't going to change anyway, and that I don't know, it was too much attention focus pulling over something that, you know, the whole don't let me go, it was just like, please, can we get on with it? And I don't know. I don't like that twist that he was the poltergeist the whole time. I should have seen it coming. But one more thing. Can I just tell you one more thing that really rubbed me the wrong way in this film, and then we'll talk about some of the positives?
Go for it.
The Matt Damon subplot really rubbed me the wrong way.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about that. Let's skip ahead. So they go to the planet that McConaughey believes was a good choice, and they disregard Anne Hathaway's opinion. They get there, and the person who's in cryostasis, which was a surprise to me, because out of all my research, for some reason I didn't know that Matt Damon was going to be in the film. It was Matt Damon. You know, like he woke up and he started crying and hugging McConaughey, and Matt Damon says, like, okay, so this is the planet that we'll have to inhabit. It's not perfect, but it's the best that we got. And then McConaughey's like, well, I'm going to go home. Like, I'm totally going to take the extra vehicle and go home because you guys don't need me here, and I've spent enough time away from my daughter. And that's when they find out that Plan A, which was to like convert the NASA space station, like NASA station, into a space station where they could start bringing colonies of people from Earth over to the new planet. It was all a ruse. It was all a lie to just get McConaughey and crew to do the mission. Plan B was actually Plan A, and that was to take these embryos and grow a new human race. And it turns out that it was all a lie because Matt Damon couldn't stand the isolation. He didn't want to die alone, and so he didn't want to let McConaughey leave and take the extra spacecraft because they needed that extra spacecraft to go to Anne Hathaway's boyfriend's planet. And Damon tried to kill McConaughey, but they got away. But then Damon blew himself up by trying to steal the ship. And there you go. So what did you not like about that?
I don't know. I'm like, it kind of feels like a side journey throughout the whole film. Like, what was the point of that other than to put their ship in danger? Because ultimately, when Damon tries to hijack the ship, he ends up blowing out the airlock, and he's killed, and portion of the ship is destroyed. So it leads to a cool action sequence. But I'm like, what was the point of that whole thing? And and some of the way that's the again, the dialogue is written, don't worry, I'm right here, just think of your children. It's like, oh, for God's sake. Just the fact that the guy's name was Man isn't that so clever that man's worst enemy is man?
Yeah, that was a little on the nose for me too. No, like I didn't like it either. I didn't. But the main reason why I didn't like it is because I felt like it was a forced antagonist.
Yes.
We didn't need an antagonist because we had a force of nature. The human race was battling against time and battling against a nature who was revolting against us. And when you go to school, you find out that there's specific types of bad guys in movies. There's specific types of films, and not every single film needs a human antagonist or needs a central focus of an antagonist. And some of them are a force of nature film, like The Perfect Storm. Like that, their antagonist was the storm, and so that's kind of how I felt Interstellar was going to be. And it like you said, it felt like a sidestep. It felt like a side journey, something that wasn't really needed. Like, it built up to a cool action sequence and a cool explosion. We got to see McConaughey's pilot skills.
Yeah, the docking part of it was cool, but like I could have lived without that if it meant cutting this subplot.
Or they could have set it up in a different way. Like, they could have set it up in a way that didn't involve Matt Damon being a bad guy.
And I thinking about this subplot, and I'm like, why is this in here? What is he going for? Is there a parallel? And watching 2001, I think it's supposed to be a reversal of expectations, because in the course of this film, we meet these along with the McConaughey's crew, includes a pair, or at least a few robots, sentient robot computers. Tars and Case, who ended up being my favorite characters in the movie, by the way.
Yeah, they were awesome.
But you meet these sentient computers, and I'm thinking, okay, 2001, these computers are going to be evil because this is supposed to be Hal. And that's what I'm waiting for, like Tars or Case to sabotage the mission. That's what I'm waiting for.
I'm glad they didn't go that way, though.
I'm glad they didn't go that way, though. But I think the expectation was you're expecting the computers to sabotage the mission, especially since when you get to Damon's planet, he's taken his apart, and I'm thinking, oh, that computer must have gone all Hal on him. And so I think the expectation is you're expecting it's the computers, and no, it's the human that's going to be the antagonist, like Hal was for the Discovery mission.
Right. Yes. And I mean, even though it didn't live up to the expectation, that wasn't really the main reason why I didn't like it. It was just for the reasons that I stated,
No, I'm just saying that I think that's maybe what the expectation that they were trying to subvert. Now, I don't think they accomplished it in the best way possible, but I think you're supposed to think that the computers are evil, and no, it's the human.
And yeah, so I mean, those were the two main things that I didn't like. I didn't like the Damon subplot. I didn't like Anne Hathaway's love speech, and I also didn't like the whole love will conquer all kind of thing. But let's talk about what we did enjoy. And now, because we've ragged on it for a while, and I'm sure people, and we always say that we want to focus on the positive here on the Nerd Party. And so let's do that, because like we said, this was a mostly positive film. We're giving it a rating of 75% out of 100, and so that means there's more good than bad, way more good than bad. And so let's talk about that.
I'm going to counter something that you said. I do like Anne Hathaway. I've been a fan of her since since Princess Diaries, because I saw that thing in the theaters, and I've kind of loved her ever since. I'm a gay guy, so I've seen Devil Wears Prada and loved her in that. And I see she's a presence that I enjoy. I like her in Get Smart. I like her in these kind of fun roles, and I do think she's a good actress. And that's the thing I do want to compliment, is that despite some of the cheesy dialogue and cheesy scenes that people are given, it's a well-cast movie. I like everybody who comes to play here in terms of actors. And I know you feel differently about Anne Hathaway, but I kind of liked everybody.
No, I enjoyed her for the most part in this film. It's just that speech ruined her character for me. But no, I love Jessica Chastain. I think she's fantastic. I think I first saw her in Tree of Life, which is a Terrence Malick film. And
which is so different from where I first saw her. I saw her in, I think the first memory I have of her is from The Help a couple years back.
Oh, yeah. It's very, very different roles. But the thing is what's funny is that Terrence Malick is a huge influence on Christopher Nolan's work. Huge influence. And you see a lot of Terrence Malick in this film. Now, if you actually saw a Terrence Malick film, Matthew, we'd be able to talk about it.
I'm sorry I didn't go to film school, but I will. Everybody's talked about Tree of Life. It's one of those films that I have to see just to say I've seen it. But
we'll start with Days of Heaven, and then we can talk. Right. But anyway, I love the casting. I thought Jessica Chastain was fantastic. Michael Caine is Michael Caine. He's going to hit it out of the park no matter where he is. And Matthew McConaughey.
has had sort of a renaissance in the past few years.
I believe it's referred to as a reconnaissance. No, not even a chuckle. Not even a giggle.
No,
okay.
Flat.
Anyway, but no, yeah, like I would never have considered myself a Matthew McConaughey fan, but after Mud and Dallas Buyers Club and True Detective, holy crap!
And I even liked Lincoln Lawyer too.
I haven't seen that one, but I want to because of his reconnaissance because of his renaissance, and it's so refreshing to see someone, rid themselves of the shackles of the rom-com and the shirtless unnecessariness.
Although he was in Magic Mike a couple years ago, so part of that is still alive.
That's true. Part of that is still alive and well.
But he's grown a lot, and while I don't appreciate every scene that he's in, I thought that he acted really well with what he was given. I mean, the actor can only do so much with the dialogue and the storyline that they're given, and I thought he did really well. He's easily identifiable person. You do want to root for him in this film, so I went with McConaughey.
I did too. Like, you root for him, you want him to survive, you want him to succeed and thrive, and you want him to get back home if he can. And I kind of like recently. I think I prefer McConaughey in the more subtle roles that he's been doing, like Dallas Buyers Club and like True Detective and things like that. Because I still don't really see him as this. I'm not saying that this was your stereotypical action film, but I like him more in the subtle one-on-one conversations than I do seeing him fly a spaceship, if that makes sense.
Yes, I agree. I feel though that while I do like a lot of the cast of the scene, some people kind of showed up here and I was like, oh well, so and so, ladies and gentlemen. Like it was just like,
like Topher Grace. Like
Topher Grace. Okay, what the hell is with this actor? I've been a fan of Topher Grace from '70s Show, but his movie career is a series of, okay, well, Topher Grace, ladies and gentlemen, what was the point of him being here? And this guy has such bad luck with movies. I mean, from Spider-Man 3 to Predators to this film.
He needs to fire his agent so bad.
Well, here's the thing. If I was being approached to be in a Christopher Nolan film, obviously I would be in it because it's going to be one of the most talked about films of the year. So I don't blame him for taking the role, but it's a thankless role.
It is a thankless role, and that's the kind of thing. Like, his character is like, but the thing is, it's not so much that like, oh, it's Topher Grace in a Christopher Nolan film. What's he doing in a Christopher Nolan film? It was just he just appeared, like he just was in the movie with no introduction, no nothing, and so it's very much, oh, and here's Topher Grace. Weird.
And I kind of feel the same way about Casey Affleck.
Okay, yeah, I did have that moment where I was like, oh wow, oh, it's Casey Affleck, but it wasn't like, what is he doing here? I thought it was a cool introduction of Casey Affleck. Because, like, for those of you who might have forgotten, it was the grown-up version of Matthew McConaughey's son.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that preference there for those of you who might have forgotten, because really, one of the things that I didn't get about this film is that McConaughey has 2 children, but he seems much more concerned with the daughter than he ever does with the son. The son almost feels like forgotten in this, and that's why I called Casey Affleck a little bit thankless, is because the focus is given so much to the Murph, the daughter, Jessica Chastain, over the son, that I feel like he kind of only had one child.
Yeah, it did kind of feel that way, but I think the reason why it felt that way is because he knew the son was going to be okay. He knew the son was going to live his life and that he wasn't going to lament his dad leaving, even though he kind of did. He felt like he left on good terms with his son, and he didn't with his daughter. So I think that's why we saw a little bit of a favoritism.
Yeah, I just kind of felt like, well, if it was me in that situation, it wouldn't be I have to get back to my daughter. It would be I have to get back to my children.
Well, he didn't say, like, I have to get back to my daughter. He said, I have to get back to my family.
Yeah.
So, I mean, although it did feel that way.
Yeah, but, like I said, still good casting. Effects, obviously, are a winner here. I mean, in IMAX, they look even better. Loved the way that this film looked.
This kind of effects was really harken back to the old days where it felt tangible. It felt real. It wasn't just a lot of CGI, even though CGI was obviously used. It felt like something that you could go out and touch. And one of the reasons why that happened is because they used digital projectors on set where they made the effects ahead of time and then projected them for the actors so they could actually interact with their background.
So they're actually reacting to the effects when they're shooting these scenes. That's cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think that's it really, because as an actor, when you're just standing and they're like, okay, and a big scary monster's coming at you, act afraid. And you're like, oh God. And you're not looking at anything.
Well, especially since, they're supposed to be in awe a lot of the times when they're reacting to the effects of this movie. And I think that, that would help me a lot if I could actually see it, then I could actually look surprised and with wonder. Because, I like the callbacks that some of these effects made. Again, in comparing the two films, when they're going through the wormhole and it's nothing but streaks of color, it reminded me so much of an updated version of the Stargate sequence at the end of 2001.
Yeah, absolutely. We started hitting it hard when they got into the wormhole and when they went into the black hole. Like, it was you could very much see the 2001 influence. I like the story. I like the acting. The special effects were spot on. And not to focus on the negative, but I want to hear your opinion on this. Mm-hmm. One thing that I thought was unnecessary and I didn't really need, or I don't think it was that necessary, was the Earth storyline after McConaughey launched. Do you feel like we needed to go back to Earth once we were already in space with McConaughey?
Well, that's the thing, not really. And a lot of the Earth scenes kind of feel, I would call them a bit one note, because the Earth scenes are nothing but despair, really. And Jessica Chastain is as fantastic as an actress that I think she is. Her character is pretty much angry throughout the whole film except for the end.
Yes, yeah.
It kind of felt like, I don't need to be here. I kind of want to be exploring the space out in the different galaxy. That's what we're setting up here. We're going outside the galaxy. The Earth stuff kind of felt unnecessary, but you're gonna have to have it because it plays such a big factor into the end of this film.
Yeah, I've like, as I was looking back on it, I was like, yeah, I guess we needed it because of the ending, but I feel like the ending could have been restructured to minimize at least what was going on Earth, because I was so much more fascinated with Anne Hathaway's and Matthew McConaughey's mission and where they were going, and the planet stuff was just really cool and really interesting. And then whenever an Earth scene came up with Jessica Chastain and Casey Affleck and Topher Grace, I just felt like, why are we here? Let's get back to Matthew McConaughey. Let's get back in space. It's called Interstellar for a reason. Let's go back to it.
One thing that I do want to talk about, Tristan, and this might put a cap on some of the problems that I have with this film, is really the controversy surrounding this film right now, which I don't know if you've read up on, but having to do with the sound mix and sound editing of this film.
Yes, I'm very aware of that because I experienced it firsthand.
Okay, I'm glad you did too, and I'm glad I'm not crazy. Now, I've run into people when I voiced this problem online that people said, oh, it's just because your theater wasn't calibrated properly, and people don't know how to calibrate theaters for film. And no, because I went to a state-of-the-art IMAX theater that shows IMAX films all the time. They may not be in 70 millimeter, but they show IMAX films all the time. And I just feel like the music in this film is while beautiful, it's so loud in certain scenes that, and the most frustrating aspect is that they put it over dialogue that I think is crucial. I mean, you have Michael Caine making this deathbed confession to Jessica Chastain, and the organ music is roaring, and I can't hear what he said, and I'm like, can we please turn on the subtitles, because I feel like I'm missing half the dialogue here.
Yeah.
It was so frustrating to me. I hate to overblow it, but it really was. I felt like I was missing crucial parts.
No, you're not overblowing it, because before I went, I saw it on Wednesday, 2 days before it was officially released, nationwide. I saw an early showing of it, but there was another showing of it a day before I saw it, and somebody posted online, they're like, yeah, I'm seeing it in Atlanta, Georgia, and they're like, don't go see it in 70 millimeter IMAX. And people are like, what are you saying? You have to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX. It was shot in IMAX. And they're like, yeah, unless you don't want to understand what's going on. he's like, maybe it was just IMAX, maybe it was just my IMAX. But the thing is, like, everybody who I've talked to who saw it in a real IMAX theater, which I'm lucky enough to have two right near me. And everyone who saw it that way was just like, my God, what's with the sound mixing? And it wasn't just loud music, it was sound mixing. And so I was like, this can't just be a mistake. And here's an article from Entertainment Weekly where they interviewed Christopher Nolan specifically about the sound issue. And I'm going to read this to you guys here. Director Christopher Nolan talked to The Hollywood Reporter about the use of sound in Interstellar and why some lines weren't the easiest to hear. Quote, "There are particular moments in this film where I decided to use dialogue as a sound effect, so sometimes it's mixed slightly underneath the other sound effects or in the other sound effects to emphasize how loud the surrounding noise is," he said. End quote. One of the film's most crucial moments occurs when Michael Caine's character reveals some important information to Jessica Chastain's, but what Caine is saying isn't crystal clear. Quote, "We are following the emotional state of Jessica's character as she starts to understand what he's been saying. Information is communicated in various different ways over the next few scenes," end quote. Beginning a new quote, "That's the way I like to work. I don't like to hang everything on one particular line." So this was intentional.
I just, this is what I find a little pretentious. It's like, why couldn't we focus on both? This could have been a gut punching scene if we were able to hear the dialogue. And it's not like you put it over a nothing scene. This was the revelation that the mission that they were going on was nothing but a ruse. And yes, it comes out later with Matt Damon giving the same dialogue, but this is supposed to be a crucial emotional scene, and I can't focus because whatever emotion he wants me to be feeling, I'm too busy going, what?
Yeah.
Speak up.
Yeah. I felt like an old person because I was just like, what? I can't hear it. They're mumbling. I hate it when they mumble in films. I can't stand that when I hear the old people behind me just screaming that they can't hear. And I was one of those people inside my head. And it didn't happen a lot, but it happened enough to be bothersome.
Well, it happened enough over important scenes. That's the thing.
Like, okay, what did you think about the music? Not just the volume, but what did you think about the music in particular? Because here's the story. Hans Zimmer made the score before anything was shot.
And that explains a lot, because I think that going back to We Watched 2001, it's going for that same vibe without using classical music, because, a lot of the 2001 score, while it is classical music, it's played on organs. The organ features so loudly in this film that it becomes overwhelming at points. But I think the instruction was make something 2001-esque and epic.
Yeah, and it was really distracting. It was really weird. Like I did not know it was Hans Zimmer until the end of the film when I saw the credits.
See, but I think you had to figure that, because isn't Zimmer just Nolan's go-to guy?
Well, yeah, no, I knew it. It had to have been Zimmer because they collaborate on every project now. But the thing is, though, is that normally with composers you can go like, oh, that's David Newman, or that's
a John Williams score.
That's a John Williams score. That's Hans Zimmer. That's, whomever. That's James Newton Howard. You can tell who it is because of their style. Now, I'm not criticizing him for going outside of his style. I'm just saying it's very different, but I don't think in a good way. But the thing is, like, Nolan asked him to do something very different, go outside of himself, because they were doing something so different. And
see, but correct me if I'm wrong, because you know more about the movie making process than I do. When composers are coming up with scores for the movies, don't they have the movie there to watch so that they know what emotion to capture for each scene?
Well, it depends. Like, everybody works different, but sometimes, like, they'll just have a script, or they'll just have a feeling, or the director will go to the composer and say, like, create a theme for this character. This character is very withdrawn and odd and recluse and rejected by society, and this is how we're going to use her or him in the film. And then they're like, okay, well, they'll create something and ask him if it works. And then what they'll do is, like, they'll toy with themes and then try to find something that the director likes. And then they'll see the footage and try to incorporate that theme into the footage, or they'll expound upon a theme. So, like, everybody's a little different, but creating an entire score before even a single frame is shot, that's odd.
Right. I mean, and I kind of feel like, again, the score for the whole film was epic. It just be epic. And the thing that I found different with between this and the score for 2001 is like the score in Interstellar is so loud and so at times bombastic. I'm like, where's my Blue Danube moment from 2001 where it's kind of light and airy and kind of fades more into the background of the scene.
Yeah, we definitely needed more of that. All right, well, before we run out of time, we got to talk about the ending. So, here's the ending for those of you who might not remember, but of course you remember because you're listening to this show. In the ending, they need to find a way to get to the third planet because Matt Damon's planet was a total ruse and you can't support life in the long term. And so, but they don't have enough fuel. And so they have this genius idea to go through the black hole because you can totally do that. And
even though a black hole, by its very nature, crushes everything upon its event horizon.
Yes, and so they go through the black hole, but they have to sacrifice the robots to do it because they have to release weight to let go of their inertia or do something with their inertia.
Those poor robots. I just got to give a shout out again. Those are my favorite. You want to talk about positives? Case and Tars, man. Those are my favorite characters in the whole thing.
Those robots were fun and cool and one of the best things about the movie. And then they sacrifice their lives for the good of the mission. And so Anne Hathaway makes her way through the black hole and to the third planet, but McConaughey has to sacrifice himself and he goes into the black hole and somehow he's not crushed into nothing and he makes it through. And all of a sudden he's in this other dimension and he's in this 4-dimensional space that this 5-dimensional space that these beings have created for him. And we can actually, like, the robot has survived apparently and is talking to McConaughey through his intercom. And these beings threw in some sort of visual representation so that he could actually fathom what the 5-dimensional space was. And all it was strings of time, segments of time, all focused in one spot in one location. That was his little girl's bedroom. And so he was able to go at any point in time and use gravity to affect things in reality. So he was able to go like to when she was a little girl and push books off the shelves, or he would go when she's a grown woman and affect the gravity so that the watch would tick at a specific rate. So he was able to affect gravity to get his message across. And this was a theme throughout the entire film because things were happening in that bedroom that they could not explain, and it turned out that it was McConaughey in this 5-dimensional space all along.
Yeah. This is the part, again, like I said, this feels where it felt like a Spielberg film, because having watched Nolan's entire oeuvre of work at this point, the thing that's consistent with all of Nolan's endings, except for this one, is that he is a big fan of big ending, drop the microphone, walk out, leave you devastated. I mean, like you find in Memento, you find out that he's fooling himself and he's allowing himself to forget so he can keep on killing. At the end of Insomnia, Al Pacino is shot and dies in retribution for his sins for killing his partner. In Prestige, you have the final confrontation between Bale and Jackman, where you feel you get it was all a play. This one, it's like this is the happy ending, and it kind of felt weird.
It did feel weird because I was not expecting a happy ending. I was expecting McConaughey to die. I was expecting him to never see his little girl again, or come back in an ethereal way or something like that where she makes peace with it. But he comes back legitimately, and just enough time to watch his daughter die of old age, which was played by Ellen Burstyn. And then he goes off after his daughter dies of old age, and he's in the future. He goes off to find Anne Hathaway.
To presumably, have a relationship, even though they had no romantic chemistry throughout the whole film. And there was never any hint of any sort of romantic tension. I mean, we see Anne Hathaway at the end of this film. She's on the other planet still mourning her dead lover. So, what's McConaughey going to do when he gets there? Are we just going to, jump into a whole new relationship or
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I don't know if they were pushing the relationship angle or just they were pushing the leave no man behind angle. I'm not quite sure where they were going because there was no romantic whatever whatsoever during the entire film. And so I don't know if they were pushing that or if they were just trying to say, like, I can't leave Anne Hathaway by herself on this planet because of relativistic speed and relativistic time. She's, like, there's no gap in between their two ages, and so he needs to go find her again to bring her back, maybe. I don't know, like, or to do the whole thing, like, let's colonize this world and have babies together. Like, I don't know which way they were trying to push us.
Yeah, and by this point too, I mean the exposition in the fifth dimensional space was just kind of like, it's not working for me. And again, when I compare this sequence in the inner space to the ending sequence of 2001, what 2001 did better is that there was no dialogue. You let yourself draw your own conclusions, and then you can debate the film for the rest of time, perhaps. But here it was exposition heavy, and I don't know how they gained this exposition, because the robot all of a sudden knows what's going on, and then McConaughey figures out somehow what's going on, and I'm like, how are you jumping to these conclusions? Let the film speak for itself. If you want to do this ending, fine. Take out all the dialogue and just have McConaughey playing with the they look like harp strings the way he fiddles with the books, but just have it play out and let the visuals and let the music and let the expressions on the actors' faces speak for themselves.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can agree with you 100%. I mean, I agree with you that it was a lot of jumping to conclusions. It was a lot of exposition. It was a lot of how the hell could you possibly know this? But I don't think it needed to be no dialogue. I don't think it needed to be anything like that, because that's a little bit too on the nose to 2001.
I suppose, but I there had to be a better way to do this, is all I'm saying. And
yeah, I think there could have been a happy medium. I think I definitely I didn't really like. Okay, here's my main thing, and I might get some criticism for this, but I didn't like the fifth dimension, and I didn't like going into that, because I know that this is a theory. I know that this is a scientific theory that is on the books and that people believe. I understand that. I get that. I've read the same articles. But I felt like when we went through the black hole, instead of being crushed into nothing where light can't even escape the gravity, I felt like we went into the realm of possible scientific future into pure science fiction.
Yeah, I the only thing that was really missing for me in that scene is the heartbeat sound, and then it was one step away from being Cisco in the wormhole.
Right, yeah, it felt kind of like that. It felt like a Star Trek episode. It felt like we're in another dimension. And then I felt like, Cisco's mom was going to come out and say, like, the Cisco is needed, something like that. And I just, again, I know it's a scientific theory. I know all about the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and everything like that. But I felt like this was definitely the point of no return when it comes to story structure, but I felt like it was that way with hard science.
Right, and by the time, admittedly too, by the time we're getting this revelation of this dialogue, I'm kind of like, this is the end of 3 hours, my butt's kind of asleep. Can we please just wrap this up?
I don't know. It was definitely not a direction that I thought it was going to go, but then I appreciate that. I'm not trying to criticize it for not taking chances, but it just didn't connect with me.
Right. Well, that's pretty much the film in a nutshell. Now, Tristan, I'm glad we talked this over, because it helped me. It did help me see that there was stuff I really did like about this film. But again, I just don't think it's this masterpiece that a lot of online people are saying, like, oh, and if you don't think it's a masterpiece, well, then you must not have gotten it. Believe me, guys, I got what they were saying. We get it. I had my coffee before I went into the theater. I was awake. I was listening. I was making mental notations. I knew what the film was saying. I just don't agree with everything that it was saying. That being said, though, I think this is a film worth seeing, and I think this is a film that still will be debated. I don't know if it'll have the same impact on the society that a 2001 would have, but I'm gonna go with the critics on this one and say that if I had to give it a score out of 10, it's kind of hovering between like a 6.5 and a 7 for me.
And I would probably rate it a little bit better than that. I'd probably rate it where it is right now. I'd say it's between a 7 and an 8 for me, because if it wasn't for all the hype, if it wasn't for all the reviews, I would say that this is a solid, good film, and this conversation would be very different. But because of all that, which, we may or may not be able to blame the movie for that, I say this is between a 7 and 8 because this is a good film. This is a solidly made film. This is an inspired film, a hard science film, and this is something that is going to, I think, inspire a new generation of STEM field people. And for that, I think it's worth applause, and I think Christopher Nolan did a great job. It just wasn't something that was earth-shattering, and so thus it gets my 7 to 8, which is nothing to sneeze at.
No, it's not. And again, this is a kind of a unique film in the sense that this is how you and I feel right now, Tristan, and you've only seen it the one time, or have you seen it more than once?
Just once. I've only seen it the one time.
Okay, I feel like it's going to be one of those films where it's going to be like, ask me again in 2 years when I've seen it more times. You know what I mean? This is just the initial reaction after one screening. So who's to say what this film how time will favor this film?
Yeah, and that's the way that I am with Fincher films and Nolan films, and it's just I have to see them a couple, like Wes Anderson films. I have to see them a couple of times. Like there's tons of Wes Anderson films that I didn't like the first time I saw them, but now they're one of my favorite movies to watch. And so maybe Interstellar will be that way. Maybe it'll age well, and maybe I'll enjoy it because I'm definitely going to pick it up because it's a good film and I want to see it again. So that is our review on Interstellar, and in a nutshell, good film, just not everything that it's cracked up to be. And we thank you so much for listening. Please go to iTunes, go to Stitcher, go wherever. Give us a rating. If you give us a 5-star rating and a review, we will mention you on the podcast. Please let us know when you do so. Give us an email at contact@thenerdparty.com or find us on Twitter. You can find me at @TheInsaneRobin.
And you can find me at mhanson0207. And I just want to say real quick, in addition to following us on Twitter and giving us iTunes reviews, like us on Facebook. We do have our own Facebook page that I don't think we've mentioned too much on the show, so I think I want to rectify that now. We've been getting more and more comments through there, and as more and more people are finding the show, so like us on Facebook. We have a page. Just look up The Nerd Party.
Yeah, it's facebook.com/The Nerd Party. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening, and this has been The Nerd Party. I'm Tristan Riddell.
And I'm Matt Hansen.
Coming up next week.
'Tis the season to be jolly and joyous. With a burst of pleasure we feel it arrive. It's a season when the saints can employ us to spread the news about peace and to keep love alive.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.